In this section, we'll talk a little bit more about the 7 states of consciousness that are mapped out in the Om mantra. The 7 states or levels are described in the article. There's 3 states of consciousness, 3 major states of consciousness symbolized by the A, the U, and the M, which we looked at briefly in the introduction. And then there's the 4th state of consciousness. After those 3 parts of the Om mantra, there's silence, the 4th, which relates to consciousness or awareness itself. And between those 4 states of consciousness, there are 3 transition states between them. And these levels of consciousness are universal. They apply to all people of all cultures, all belief systems, all religion. These are universally experienced levels of consciousness. And with a little bit of reflection, we can easily see that this is so. Now here is a symbol of the familiar graphic symbol of the Om mantra, and it has some meaning too. The lower curve of the mantra down here represents the gross level, the conscious, the waking state, and this plane of reality is called Vaishnavar. We saw that in the graphic in the first part there. And the center curve, this center curve here, represents the subtle, the unconscious, or the dreaming level of our consciousness. This is called Tejasa. The upper curve up here represents the causal plane of reality, the subconscious or the deep sleep level, and it is called Prajna. And remember, we're going to go into all of these in a little greater detail in the forthcoming sections. And then the dot or the bindu, it's called bindu. This little dot up here is called bindu, which literally means point, and that's a symbol of the absolute reality, the 4th state, out of which all of this manifests. So a symbolism here, see this little arc here, so you have one non-dual reality symbolized by the dot, the point, or the bindu, and then this symbolizes the manifesting process, however we may individually hold that as occurring, and then it manifests, and then this manifests outward. It can be called avidya or maya. Some people with a more theistic orientation may call it God, but there's a manifesting process where the absolute reality comes outward into the gross world, out into the causal, the subtle, and then the gross levels of reality. And that's that symbolism. And there's a description of the art. Anytime you want, you can pause and read these if you want to look at these a little bit closer. And here is another graphic of that Om that is pointing out exactly the same thing. In many traditions and some of the religious texts known to humanity, this absolute reality has been referred to as like a mustard seed. It's the infinitely small out of which everything manifests is the idea. Interestingly, I don't like to oversell this point because I'm not sure that it's what the scientists have in mind, but isn't it intriguing that we have the modern concept in physics of the Big Bang, which is sometimes conceptually held as being a point as well. Anyway, so this is the absolute reality again. This up here, this arc up here is prajna, the deep sleep state, the latent unconscious, the causal plane. Remember, we're going to go through these in a little more detail as we move through these sections. This middle section in here, I don't know exactly where you would put the dividing line between these sections, but the middle section is called Tejasa. It's the dreaming state, it's the active unconscious, and it's the subtle world. And this out here is the symbol of the gross world. They're called Vaishnavar. So the causal comes outward into the subtle, and the subtle comes out into the gross. That's the idea. And so when we remember Om, the principle is that we're remembering Om, and the Om is leading us inward through those 3 levels to the absolute reality, to the what can be called center of consciousness for each of us individually, which is the dot. And then here's, this will be very familiar, this what we affectionately call the circle chart. Swami Rama used to write this on blackboards a lot in giving lectures, and it's simply it's another visual reference of Om. So here's the ah, here's the u, here's the and here's the silence in the purple. And this is with the names of those planes of realities as mapped out in a text called the Mandukya Upanishad. Now, Om is widely referred to through most or many of the Upanishads, the ancient texts, and they're in the Bhagavad Gita. Om is in the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Yoga Sutras. And so these are the levels described, outlined, named in the Mandukya Upanishad: Vaishnara, Tejasa, Prajna, and Turiya. And so we're going to run into this. We're going to use this a lot in our journey. And so we'll stop there on this section just to introduce this principle, go a little bit more into 7 levels of consciousness mapped out by the Om. And remember, we're going to go through each of those in a little more detail in the forthcoming sections. So thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying this so far. And remember, pause this and stop and read any of these that you want. I don't want to sit here and just read this whole thing to you, but to talk about it. And you can pause and look at it a little bit more if you want. Okay? Thank you for visiting. I hope this is fun for you. Bye-bye.